of people's first anime are things like Pokemon or Dragon Ball, stuff that played when they were a kid. I didn't really watch anime until around 2016, so my first anime was One Punch Man, or at least I thought it was. The other day, one of my brothers and I were sharing what music we'd been listening to recently, and we came across a song that reminded us of something, but neither of us could figure out what it was. Hey, do you remember that VHS tape with Noah's Ark on it? No? I think it was like in an anime style, and there were a bunch of other stories on it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I think I do remember that. Right? And it had like a bit in the middle where there's a girl chasing a balloon or something, and there's a song that plays. That's what this reminds me of. After that, we forgot all about sharing music and went down the rabbit hole of looking for footage from the VHS. It turns out the VHS was a collection of episodes from an old anime called Tales of Magic. Here's a little bit of the theme that made me remember it exists. As you might have guessed, the anime was a collection of different stories, fables, and fairy tales, all animated on a budget of what I would have to assume was about $0.50. The 3 episodes I remember most strongly are Noah's Ark, The Country Mouse and the City Mouse, and The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
One of the oldest and best-known stories of all time is Noah's Ark, and it comes to us from the Bible.
Noah's Ark starts off with some narration about how the world was a terrible place, followed by this rather vivid imagery. I remember thinking that was really creepy as a kid, but that probably goes without saying. Basically, the world is an awful place, and Noah's like the only good person left. He tells the people, "God is angry because y'all have forsaken him." But the people are all like, "You crazy, Noah." Basically, no one listens to Noah, and then one afternoon they suddenly notice that Noah built an entire ark while they weren't looking.
Hey, what's that?
2 of every kind of animal get on the boat, and the storm starts up. Noah's like, "Whoops, almost forgot the ants." And they set sail, leaving the population to drown. Eventually, Noah and his fam find land, and they live happily ever after. And that was the first anime I ever watched.
An Aesop's fable about the boy who cried wolf.
Our story starts with a boy who hates having to look after the sheep because it's boring. He's pretty keen to ditch and hang out with some girls, but they're like, "Nah dude, look after the sheep." One day he freaks out because he thinks he sees a wolf, so he calls down the men of the town to help. Since until now he's been completely attention deprived, he lets the town's sudden interest in his story, and by extension him, get to his head. He starts regularly claiming he's seen wolves, so much so that eventually the townspeople can't be bothered going to see if he needs help.
But then one day...
What's the matter with those crazy sheep? Whoa, it's a wolf!
The wolf chases the boy and his shoe comes off. I remember seeing the scene with the wolf chewing the shoe and thinking that wolves must like the taste of shoes. Anyway, the episode ends with the boy screaming for his life.
From Aesop's fables, the country mouse and the city mouse.
Basically, there's this mouse who lives in the countryside, and he never has to do anything ever, and his life is great. Then one day he's visited by his old pal, the city mouse. He tries to make sure the city mouse has a good time, but the city mouse is a bit high maintenance.
Why, a city mouse would never be caught living in a hole like this. We live in a regular house. When it rains, the roof doesn't leak, and during the winter, we stay as warm as toast. And the food, why, you wouldn't believe the variety.
The city mouse manages to convince the country mouse to move to the city with him. Once they get there, they're immediately confronted by a bunch of the dangers that you find in any big city, like horse-drawn carriages, dogs, and angry mobs.
Well, that was quite an introduction to city life. That country mouse had never run so fast in his entire life.
They arrive at the house where the city mouse has been living, and it's then that the city mouse decides to mention that there's a chance they'll get mauled to death by a cat. They sneak past the cat to get food, and I think now's a good time to bring up the fact that the country mouse makes a lot of really annoying sounds. The noises wake up the cat and a chase ensues, resulting in the country mouse almost dying. The country mouse decides that he wants to leave. City life blows chunks, dude. You're breaking my heart, dude. So, what were the morals of these lovely stories? Well, I'm sure each of us has our own interpretation, but I like to think the morals were as follows. Don't be a bad person or you'll die. Don't be a bad person or you'll die. And don't live in the city or you'll die. Thanks for watching! In my first video I asked you guys to comment drawing prompts, and I got more prompts than I expected. At one point I was like, I'll do all of them, but I ended up running out of time, so I chose to do this one. Mr. Wing. I thought it would be the most fun. If you don't know who Mr. Wing is, read Batman The Adventures Continue, or subscribe to Watchtower Database. Or you could, Google it. Anyway, comment more drawing prompts, and they could end up in the next video.